So there's a YouTuber I've been following for a while now named Emanuella, and she's a nice person, the kind of person who even calls out other Christians for shunning atheists or for not loving gay people. In fact, one of her old videos even challenged me once before, and I would have recommended her channel were it not for the fact that she has since deleted her account. But that's what this video is all about. See, after the recent Duck Dynasty incident, she made a video on homosexuality wherein she basically reiterated the Orthodox Christian position on it. You know that it's not the intended purpose for sex. And if you watched her video, you would see that unlike some, she was not hateful or bigoted about it, nor was she trying to push her views down anyone's throat. In fact, she went to greater lengths than most people I know to encourage people to adopt the love the sinner attitude. However, this was apparently not good enough for certain individuals who decided to behave like creeps. See, a number of YouTube atheists quickly showed up and started to act like they had sticks up their butt. At first I thought this was a little amusing, stupid trolls throwing childish temper tantrums because someone said something politically incorrect. And if this was merely vociferous disagreement, I wouldn't really care. But this quickly turned into an avalanche of vitriolic bullying of the most sickening nature I have ever seen. What they did was cruel, and it got so bad that Emanuella finally deleted 2 of her channels, her Facebook page, and even her blog. Now, my friend Derez83 suspects that she may have received private death threats. I don't know about that, but anyway, if I'm not mistaken, I believe he's planning to do a video on this whole debacle as well, so stay tuned. Now, to you responsible parties out there, and there are many of you, let me show you what you just did. This is a clip from one of Emanuela's older videos still on YouTube. This is a person who would have stuck up for you and been sympathetic towards you, in contrast to any number of people with less patience. This is the kind of person who would have gladly been your friend. That's the kind of person Emanuella is. Was. And how did you gang of sociopaths repay her? You took one of the nicest, kindest Christians on YouTube, and you dragged her through the mud before crucifying her. I hope you're all real proud of yourselves. You despicable cowards spit on a kind hand, so don't expect anything from me, and make no mistake, I have the goods on you, and you're going to be held accountable. You sicken me. I would suggest that we start to flag these people, but I'll get to that at the end. Anyway, I would like to look at the reaction to the video and why it was so extreme. If this was Westboro, I wouldn't be surprised, nor particularly opposed for that matter. However, it appeared these scumbags went off the deep end over someone simply trying to express their view in the nicest way possible. So why did they react like this? Well, I found several comments that were very telling. It appears that in their minds, merely disapproving of homosexuality is identical to bigotry or homophobia, and therefore anyone suggesting otherwise should be viciously attacked and cowed into silence. What they are suggesting, whether they realize it or not, is that sex should be disconnected from its natural telos of reproduction. And if sex is disconnected from teleology, well then it has no meaning or purpose outside of what humans give it. And as we all know, purpose is what defines morality. So without a telos or purpose, sexual morality could not exist in the first place. This is why we saw the recent polygamy ruling in Utah being based on previous precedent on gay marriage. This is also very likely why illegitimacy has risen 30% in Norway since the normalization of gay marriage in the 90s. And this is why many countries that have normalized one form of sexual deviancy also tend to be morally degenerate across the board. And as it turns out, this is the intended goal. The entire point was to disconnect sex from telos, whether most realize it or not. Let me tell you the truth about this, in the words of lesbian activist Masha Jessen.
I agree. It's a no-brainer that we should have the right to marry, but I also think equally that it's a no-brainer that the institution of marriage should not exist. So that causes my brain some trouble. And part of it, why it causes me trouble, is because fighting for gay marriage generally involves lying about what we're going to do with marriage when we get there. Because we lie that the institution of marriage is not going to change. And that is a lie. The institution of marriage is going to change, and it should change. And again, I don't think it should exist.
Now clearly, no morally sane individual would ever suggest something so degenerate as the idea that marriage should not even exist. But it's quite apparent what's going on here. Once sex is disconnected from telos, sexual morality is abandoned in favor of crass hedonism and pig morality. Now I am by no means suggesting that gay marriage is the only causative factor behind this disconnection of sex and telos, but this broader disconnection is why cretins like Dan Savage ridicule monogamy as ridiculous. This is why prostitution has been legalized in Canada and the Netherlands. This is why there are such political abominations as bro-choice. This is why Miley Cyrus is cheered when she dances across stage like a slut. This is why the completely objective and totally unpoliticized APA has labeled pedophilia as a sexual orientation. This is why a 60-year-old pedophile in Italy was just acquitted from molesting an 11-year-old child due to the court's considerations on their, quote, amorous relationship. This is why organizations like Femin are allowed to act like wild animals. What we are dealing with, ladies and gentlemen, is the culmination of cultural Marxism. And cultural Marxism is a menace which must not be tolerated. What people are really saying when they say that it is bigoted to simply disagree with homosexuality is that anyone who believes in traditional sexual mores, that is, that sex should be connected to telos, is not to be tolerated, and that anyone politically incorrect enough to disagree must be branded with a scarlet letter. Well, I know that a lot of people pretend not to see this added dimension, but it's people like this who directly equate bigotry with mere disagreement who are, whether they know it or not, the enablers of the cancer of progressivism in this country. They are the ones effectively silencing others who would otherwise oppose its broader degeneration. Needless to say, this cannot be tolerated. This must be called out as the menace it is whenever it rears its ugly head. Now, as a quick aside, after looking at world religions, I've come to discover that there is a remarkable level of agreement on matters of morality, including sexual morality. So I would suggest that people of any religion unite to crush this before it ruins civilization. Now, of course, as I explained a minute ago, this is the vanguard of a much larger sexual revolution. They're using the homosexual issue as a wedge with which to open the floodgates. See, they know that if they can play on people's goodwill and sense of equality, they can manipulate human emotions into opening Pandora's box. Well, we have to reverse that. And in addition to calling out promoters of PC for what they are, someone posted an article on my Facebook feed that gave me an idea here. Remember back with the whole Duck Dynasty thing, some of the comments Phil Robertson made? I want to direct your attention to one comment he made in particular. Quote, "It seems like, to me, a vagina, as a man, would be more desirable than a man's anus." At first, when people told me about this and how it was bad, I did tend to think it was a bit over the line myself. You know, it seemed a little vulgar. But then when I got to thinking about it, I began to wonder why. After all, this was in an interview with GQ magazine, and it's not exactly like they don't already talk about sex in there all the time. And after all, this is just comparing heterosexual sex with homosexual sex. So after second thought, what precisely is the big deal? What was it that made me think this quote was over the line? Well, this article pinpointed it for me, and it had to do with the so-called yuck factor. Namely, sexual activists have noticed that a lot of average people tend to find the practice of homosexuality to be, in some sense, yucky. As such, two sexual activists, Marshall Kirk and Hunter Madsen, had this to say in their 1989 book. Quote, "In the early stages of the campaign, the public should not be shocked and repelled by premature exposure to homosexual behavior itself. Instead, the imagery of sex per se should be downplayed and the issue of gay rights reduced, so far as possible, to an abstract social question." Unquote. So what the article goes on to suggest is that this should be denied them. You know, but just politely point out what homosexual activity is. I have the article below if you want to check it out as food for thought. Now we come to the issue of the comments left on her channel. Fortunately, before she shut her account down, I was able to go over her comment section and take screenshots of all of the particularly offensive comments. And Mystic Psyche gave me a list of 14 more that he found. So I'm going to play them all for you, and you can determine if these people merit flagging or not. Now, before we begin, I was having a discussion with Sam Roth and Realistic Nihilist and some others the other day, and they didn't seem too happy I was doing this. But I do respect their view that the system shouldn't be abused. So I'll add that I don't want you to go overboard with this and turn this into some sort of false flagging campaign. Okay? Don't just flag someone because they're simply vociferously disagreeing or appear angry. Just use the YouTube flagging system for what it was legitimately intended for. Cyberbullying, sexual harassment, death threats, that sort of thing. Now we come to the ringleader, Mr. Bratzion. I watched Mr. Bratzion's video response up until about the last 30 seconds, and it seemed pretty civil insofar as it went, and so I was going to give him a pass. However, then Derez told me about the end of it, and I went back and watched. But first, let's see what Mr. Repzion had to say several months ago about simulating masturbation towards women.
This is a video response to the video titled Public Wanking. So yesterday, when I was in Spain, Madrid, I saw this trend on Twitter. I clicked it, clicked the link, found the video, watched the video, stopped watching the video, became enraged, punched a wall, broke my hand. Not really, but I was mad. The link down below in the description will take you to this video where these 4 or 5 Justin Bieber look-alike teens, or I should say children, because that's what they are, children in Denmark think it's a great idea to publicly masturbate comedically. That what they're doing in this video is sexual harassment, because what they're doing is they're going up to young girls, dropping their pants, I mean in their underwear, okay? In their underwear, they then put a towel around them and then pretend to do this. Okay.
Well, guess what, Daniel? This doesn't involve towels or pulling down your pants, but I think I found a good example of this.
This, at the end of your video, hearts, I actually pictured 2 dicks going through, like, you know, you hearting 2 dicks in between your hands. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just perverted like that. But, yeah. You may be laughing by now, but it's not funny. It's not funny, and I know I will be the minority here, but I don't find this, and I will never find this type of behavior funny. So the question then remains, are you and me going to tolerate this sort of behavior on YouTube as quote-unquote entertainment?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. No, we won't. You singled out a person and sexually degraded her in front of 170,000 people. Oh, and check this out.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, her video is linked down below. This has been a real talk on homosexuality.
Well, look at that smug little smile. Now, of course, you wouldn't dare go say those rotten things to yourself. No, instead you set your cowardly butt behind your 170,000 subscribers and sent them to do your dirty work for you. Shame on you, Daniel. So what are we going to do with you, Daniel? Rumor has it that Daniel Sulzbach's parents are Christians, and I'm sure they would be totally delighted to hear what their son has been doing on YouTube. So if anyone would be so kind, I am rather curious to see what Daniel's parents would have to say after they watch this. Lastly, if you're out there, Emanuella, and you're watching this, I don't know if you want to come back after all this, but if you do, I'll help you get your subscribers back, and I'll try and get my friends to do the same. And if you don't, what you did took a lot of courage, and it was good having you here. God bless.